John and Marcus grew up on the same street. Same school. Same kind of parents who worked too much and talked about money too little. At 24, they both landed decent jobs. Both started making enough to finally breathe a little. And both had the same conversation one night over cheap beer: we should really start investing. Marcus opened an account that weekend. Nothing dramatic. $50. An index fund he'd read about for maybe 40 minutes total. He didn't know if it was perfect. He just did it. John kept researching. 6 months later, John knew more about the stock market than most people he'd ever met. He could explain compound interest at a dinner party. He had a spreadsheet. A plan. A folder on his desktop called Financial Freedom that he hadn't opened in 3 weeks. 10 years passed. Marcus wasn't rich. He hadn't cracked some code. But he had something John was still waiting to start building. And the painful part, the part that actually keeps you up at night if you let yourself think about it, is that John never thought of himself as someone who was standing still. He thought he was getting ready. There's a difference between those two things. And most people never figure out which one they're actually doing. There's a psychological state that nobody talks about enough, and it might be the most dangerous place a person can live. It's the space between wanting and doing. And the reason it's so dangerous is because it feels productive. It genuinely does. You're watching videos about investing. You're reading about index funds. You're following people on social media who talk about building wealth. You're thinking about it constantly. And your brain, this incredibly sophisticated machine, registers all of that as activity. As progress. As something. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called substitution. When the real goal feels too heavy, too uncertain, too exposed, the mind quietly swaps it for a lighter version. One that looks similar from the outside. One that carries zero risk. Planning becomes the product. Research becomes the result. Knowing becomes a substitute for doing. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The more you learn without acting, the more reasons you find not to act. Because knowledge without movement doesn't build confidence, it builds doubt. Every new thing you learn is also a new thing that could go wrong. You start to see the complexity more clearly. The risks feel more real. And somehow, the person who knows nothing about investing starts their first position with confidence, while you, who've spent months studying, are still waiting for the perfect moment. That's not a coincidence. That's the system working exactly as it was built. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. What exactly are you waiting for? Not the surface answer. Not the right time or more stability or when I have a bit more saved up. I mean the real answer. The one underneath that one. Because here's what I've noticed, and tell me if this sounds familiar: the conditions for starting are almost always almost right. There's almost enough money. The market is almost in a good place. Life is almost settled enough. You're almost ready. Almost is a very comfortable word. It keeps the dream alive without putting it at risk. And that's the function it serves. Not to prepare you. To protect you. But protection has a price. And in finance, that price has a name. It's called opportunity cost. The invisible loss. The thing you don't see on any statement because it's not money you lost. It's money you never made. Here's a number that tends to land differently when you actually sit with it. If you invest $200 a month starting at 22, with an average annual return of 8%, by the time you're 62 you'll have crossed the $700,000 mark. If you start at 32, same amount, same return, you end up with around $300,000. 1 decade of waiting. $400,000 of silence. That's not a scare tactic. That's just time, doing what time does, rewarding the people who showed up, and quietly moving on from the ones who didn't. And the hardest part? You'll never feel the loss. It won't hurt. It'll just not be there. Here's something that goes deeper than strategy. Deeper than knowledge. Deeper than timing. Some people don't start because, on a level they're not fully conscious of, they don't actually see themselves as someone who builds wealth. Think about that for a second. Not someone who wants it. someone who is it. There's a difference, and it's enormous. The way you were raised around money. The conversations that happened at the dinner table, or didn't happen. The way the adults in your life talked about rich people, with admiration, with resentment, with suspicion. All of that got absorbed. Quietly. Completely. Without your permission. And it formed something psychologists call a money identity. A deep, largely unconscious story about who you are in relation to wealth. Whether you deserve it. Whether people like you actually get it. Whether wanting it makes you greedy, naive, or just setting yourself up for disappointment. A lot of people walking around with serious ambition are also carrying a quiet belief that success is for other people. People who went to better schools. People who had connections. People who got lucky in ways they didn't. And here's the cruel mechanism: when your actions start to contradict that story, discomfort rises. So you pull back. You self-sabotage. You find a reason to wait. Not because you're weak. Because your brain is trying to keep you consistent with who it thinks you are. Identity is the architecture. Everything else is furniture. Until you change the blueprint, you'll keep rearranging the same rooms. Nobody likes to say they're afraid. Especially not about money. Especially not in a culture that celebrates boldness, hustle, and the kind of confidence that looks good in a caption. So fear doesn't show up as fear. It's too smart for that. It dresses up. It puts on a suit. It shows up as logic. I need to do more research first. The economy is too unpredictable right now. I want to make sure I'm doing this the right way. All of those sentences can be completely true. And they can also be fear. Both things at the same time. That's what makes it so hard to catch. There's a specific kind of fear that lives inside people who are intelligent and self-aware, and it's the fear of being wrong publicly. Of making a move, having it fail, and then having to sit with the evidence that you tried and it didn't work. Because as long as you haven't started, you're still protected. The dream is still intact. The potential is still unlimited. The moment you begin, you introduce the possibility of a result, and results can be disappointing. So the mind builds a case. A very reasonable, very articulate case for stillness. And you listen to it. Because it sounds like wisdom. But there's a version of caution that isn't caution at all. It's paralysis with good vocabulary. Real caution moves slowly but still moves. It takes smaller steps, asks better questions, accepts imperfect conditions. It doesn't wait for certainty, because certainty, in any market, in any life, doesn't exist. The people who built something didn't wait until they weren't afraid. They just stopped letting the fear file the paperwork. There's a myth embedded in the way we talk about wealth building. And it's so widespread, so accepted, that most people never think to question it. The myth is that starting looks like a statement. A bold move. A significant amount. A moment where everything shifts and you can feel it happening. Like a scene in a movie where the character finally decides, and the music swells, and you know something has changed forever. Real life doesn't work that way. And the expectation that it should is quietly responsible for more financial inaction than almost anything else. Because people wait for the moment to feel big enough. Meaningful enough. Certain enough. And when the ordinary Tuesday arrives, with its ordinary bank balance and its ordinary anxiety and its completely uncinematic atmosphere, it doesn't feel like the moment. So they wait for a better one. But here's what the people who actually built something understand. Usually only in hindsight, the door to starting is always small. Almost embarrassingly small. It's a $50 contribution to an index fund. It's opening the account you've had the tab open for 3 weeks. It's reading 1 page instead of the whole book. It's a decision so modest that your brain doesn't even register it as a threat. And that's exactly why it works. The grand gesture triggers resistance. The small action slips underneath it. Momentum doesn't care about size. It cares about direction. One step, genuinely taken, does something to a person that 1,000 plans never will. It makes the next step feel possible. You don't need to be ready. You need to be in motion. And motion, even slow and uncertain motion, changes everything about how you see yourself and what you believe is available to you. The door is small, but it opens into something much larger than it looks. If you've made it here, to this point in the video, I want to take a second and actually acknowledge that. Because most people click away. Most people consume the first few minutes and move on to the next thing. You stayed. And that tells me something about you. So if this has been hitting close to home, if something in here has been describing you more accurately than you expected, hit that subscribe button. Join us here. We put out content every single day for people who are serious about understanding money, building wealth, and thinking differently about the life they're constructing. Because that's who this channel is for. Not the ones who already have it figured out. The ones who are still in the middle of figuring it out. Just like most of us. And speaking of the middle of figuring it out, there's a verse that keeps coming back to me whenever I think about this exact moment. The moment right before someone decides to move. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Written thousands of years ago. Still the most precise diagnosis of financial paralysis I've ever encountered. The wind is always blowing. The clouds are always moving. The conditions are never going to be perfectly still. And the person waiting for stillness will be waiting long after the harvest is gone. You don't plant because the weather is perfect. You plant because the seed won't grow in your hand. That's the move. Not the perfect moment. Just the planting. Block 8, what you're really protecting. At the beginning of this video, I asked you a question. Why does someone want something this badly, still not move? And we've walked through the answers together. The substitution. The opportunity cost. The identity that was built before you were old enough to choose it. The fear that learned to speak in complete sentences. The myth of the perfect moment. But there's one last layer. And it might be the most honest thing I say today. What you're protecting, underneath all of it, is the version of yourself that still has unlimited potential. The one who hasn't tried yet. The one who can't fail yet. The one where the dream is still perfect because it's still untouched. Starting means risking that. And I understand why that's hard. Truly. But here's what nobody tells you about the people who finally moved. They didn't protect that version of themselves. They let it go. They chose the real, messy, uncertain, imperfect version of building something over the clean, safe, comfortable version of imagining it. And something happened to them that no amount of planning ever produced. They became someone different. Not because they succeeded immediately. Not because everything worked. But because they acted. And action changes identity in a way that thought never can. The wind is always blowing. The clouds are always moving. And somewhere, on an ordinary Tuesday, someone just like you opened a small door. I wonder what's on the other side of yours. If this video made you think, really think, hit that subscribe button and share this with 5 people who need to hear it. Not people who already invest. People who are still waiting. They need this more than you know. And drop a comment below. Tell me honestly, where are you in this? Still waiting? Just started? And tell me what you want us to go deep on next. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.